It only takes one moment to change everything. The words echoed in Lucas Bennett's mind as he stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman who unknowingly just altered the course of his life. Jasmine Williams, a young woman whose beauty was as unexpected as it was striking, stood before him in a moment of vulnerability. The delicate fabric of her dress fluttered softly as she adjusted herself, completely unaware that she was no longer alone. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't meant to barge in, and yet here he was, trapped in a moment that was as awkward as it was undeniable. Her gaze met his for a split second, and he saw a flash of surprise, then nothing. She quickly pulled her robe tighter, a gesture that seemed both instinctive and deliberate. The room felt smaller. He felt smaller. He didn't know what to do. Should he apologize, turn away, or pretend this never happened? He couldn't tear his eyes away. She was, in that moment, everything he hadn't realized he needed. And somehow, despite the embarrassing situation, Lucas couldn't deny the connection. It wasn't lust, not exactly. It was something more. A pull he couldn't quite explain but felt deep within his bones. Jasmine's features, her presence, her quiet strength, it captivated him like nothing else ever had. But there was also a problem. Lucas Bennett wasn't the kind of man who found himself in situations like this. A billionaire CEO, his life was organized, scheduled, and predictable. Yet, standing in that doorway, he felt none of that. He felt out of control. He was used to getting what he wanted, making decisions with a simple stroke of a pen or a word spoken in a boardroom. He was a man who made things happen. But right now, in front of this woman, he was lost. Jasmine, meanwhile, had already turned away. She was quick to gather herself, clutching the robe tighter around her as if trying to shield herself from his gaze. The tension in the air thickened, and he was left standing there, unsure of what to say, uncertain of his own emotions. She had no idea who he was, and in a way, that made him feel strangely vulnerable. This wasn't supposed to be how it went. He wasn't supposed to be the one who felt exposed. Yet here he was. His mind raced, trying to catch up to what had just happened. Jasmine had already begun to move toward the bathroom, but he stopped her. "Wait," he said, his voice low. She paused, her back still turned to him. There was no anger in her stance, no tension. It was almost as if she had already accepted the awkwardness and was willing to move past it. I didn't mean to intrude." His voice faltered for a moment, but he regained his composure. "I'm Lucas Bennett, CEO of Bennett Enterprises." The words sounded strange coming from his mouth. They were so formal, so impersonal. He almost didn't recognize himself. Jasmine turned slightly, her expression unreadable. She didn't seem impressed, but there was no sign of fear or annoyance either. Just a quiet calm. "I know who you are," she said, her tone steady. "And I'm not interested in any business." Lucas's brow furrowed. He wasn't sure why that stung, but it did. He had been in control of so many situations, but this wasn't one of them. He found himself wanting to understand her, wanting to know more. This wasn't just about the awkwardness of the moment. It was about something deeper, something unexpected. She wasn't like the others. This wasn't just another fleeting attraction. This was different. But how could he explain that to her? Or even to himself? Jasmine didn't give him a chance to respond. She turned back toward the bathroom, her steps confident, as if she were the one in control of the situation. But Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. Something irreversible. He watched as she disappeared into the bathroom, and for a long moment, he stood there, staring at the closed door, unable to move. Everything he knew had just been turned upside down, and he wasn't sure how to fix it. He wasn't sure if he even wanted to. Lucas stood in the hallway, his hand still resting on the doorframe. The silence between them seemed endless, but Jasmine's retreat into the bathroom left him with nothing but the sound of his own heartbeat. He had been in many high-stakes business deals, navigating through boardrooms with ease. Yet now, in this moment, he felt entirely out of place. His life had always been predictable, with everything under control. But this encounter, this unexpected intrusion into his life, had thrown him off balance. He didn't know what to make of the feeling that had taken root in him. He couldn't get her out of his mind, and that was something he wasn't used to. He wasn't the type to be distracted by anyone, especially not someone like her. She wasn't part of his world. Yet, here he was, unable to focus on anything else. The brief glance they had exchanged, The way her eyes had met his before she quickly turned away had left him unsettled. She wasn't like the others he had known, those who admired him for his success or his wealth. No, Jasmine had something different. She had a strength, an aura that seemed to repel the world's expectations. As Lucas stood there, he realized he was in uncharted territory. He could feel his own tension building as he wondered what would happen next. How could he fix this awkward moment? How could he erase the discomfort that lingered in the air? He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. Jasmine was not going to be easy to forget. He couldn't help but wonder if that was the universe's way of telling him he needed to let go of his perfectly controlled life for just a moment. Maybe it was time for him to confront something real, something that wasn't tied to business or strategy. But even as that thought crossed his mind, doubt crept in. Was he really willing to allow someone into his life? Someone who was so different from him? He had built everything he had from the ground up, and he had done so alone. There was a comfort in that isolation, in the clear boundaries he had set for himself. But now, those boundaries seemed to be crumbling. It wasn't just about physical attraction. No, it was something deeper. Something about Jasmine made him feel like he had been missing out on something bigger, something beyond just business deals and boardroom power. And yet, how could he allow someone into his world without knowing everything about them? Jasmine was a mystery to him, and that fact only added to her allure. She wasn't impressed by his title or his success, and that intrigued him even more. As Lucas turned away from the door, he realized he had no idea what he was supposed to do now. Should he go after her? Try to explain himself? Or should he just let it go and pretend like nothing had happened? He wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. He couldn't stop thinking about her. As the hours passed, Lucas found himself distracted, unable to focus on the stack of paperwork in front of him. His mind kept drifting back to Jasmine. He had to know more about her. He had to find out if the connection he felt was just his imagination, or if it was something real. He had spent years building a life where he could control every detail. But now, it seemed that the one thing he couldn't control was his own heart. Later that evening, Lucas sat at his desk, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating his face as he glanced at the clock. The day had come to a close, but his mind was still racing. He needed to see Jasmine again. He needed to understand what had happened between them. But he couldn't just walk up to her and ask. That would be too forward, too invasive. No, he had to find another way. He picked up his phone, his fingers hovering over the screen. It took him a moment, but he finally typed out a message. It was simple, brief, and to the point. Would you like to have dinner with me? He stared at the message for a long time before pressing send. He didn't know what would happen after this, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lucas sat at his desk, the dim light of his office casting long shadows on the walls. He stared at his phone, his finger hovering over the screen. The message he had sent to Jasmine was simple, but his mind raced with uncertainty. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Every time he closed his eyes, her face was all he saw. The way her eyes had met his, the softness of her expression despite the awkward situation, it haunted him. He had built an empire, controlled every aspect of his life, but now, everything felt out of his grasp. He was used to taking charge, making things happen, but with her, it felt different. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to feel this way about anyone, let alone someone like Jasmine. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. He had spent the entire day trying to shake the thoughts of her, but they lingered. His mind wandered back to the brief moment they shared. She was strong, independent, and unbothered by the fact that he had witnessed something deeply personal. It made him wonder who she really was. What had shaped her into the woman standing in front of him? Lucas had everything most people could only dream of, but it had never brought him the sense of peace he was starting to feel when he thought of Jasmine. She wasn't impressed by his money or his power, and that intrigued him more than anything. There was something real about her, something he couldn't quite put into words, but it pulled him in. He looked at his phone again, the screen still blank except for the message he had sent. The notification didn't come immediately, and as the minutes ticked by, he began to feel a knot form in his stomach. Was she going to respond? Did she think he was being too forward? What if she didn't feel the same way? What if she was just being polite? Just as Lucas was about to put his phone down in frustration, it buzzed. A new message. His heart skipped a beat as he unlocked the screen. I'd love to, the message read. I'm free tonight at 7. Lucas smiled to himself. a sense of relief washing over him. He hadn't expected her to say yes so easily, but she did. He quickly typed back, confirming the time and the location of a nearby restaurant he knew would give them privacy, but also the chance to enjoy a nice meal. He wasn't sure what he was expecting out of this dinner. Was it just a chance to get to know her better? Or was it something more? The uncertainty made his heart race, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a flutter of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. Later that evening, Lucas arrived at the restaurant first. He chose a quiet corner table, away from the hustle and bustle of the other diners. The atmosphere was intimate, perfect for conversation. He ordered a glass of red wine and waited, his hands slightly trembling as he tried to calm his nerves. He had been in countless meetings, speaking to people from all walks of life, but tonight felt different. Tonight was about something entirely new, something beyond the world of business. As he looked out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Lucas reflected on how quickly his life had changed in such a short time. From the moment he had accidentally walked in on Jasmine, nothing had been the same. He was no longer just the CEO of Bennett Enterprises. He was a man who, for the first time, was eager to understand someone on a deeper level. The thought was foreign to him. He wasn't used to this vulnerability, but in Jasmine's presence, it felt natural. As the door to the restaurant opened, Lucas turned toward it, his heart racing once again. There she was, Jasmine. She stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room until her eyes met his. A smile tugged at her lips as she made her way toward the table. She was dressed simply yet elegantly, her presence commanding yet graceful. Lucas stood to greet her, his nerves forgotten as he reached out to pull out the chair for her. She sat down, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. The silence between them was comfortable, but it was filled with unspoken words, both of them unsure of what to say next. Finally, Jasmine broke the silence. "I didn't expect you to actually follow through with it," she said, her voice light, but with a hint of curiosity. Lucas chuckled softly, feeling the tension eased just a little. "I don't usually back down from things I start," he replied. "And I was curious about you." Jasmine raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by his response. "Curious about me?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "What is it that makes you so curious?" Lucas paused, gathering his thoughts. He didn't want to come off as too intense, but he knew he couldn't deny the truth. "There's something about you, Jasmine," he said softly. "I can't quite explain it, but it's real. You're different from anyone I've ever met." Jasmine studied him for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. She didn't say anything right away, but Lucas could see the wheels turning in her head. "Different how?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Lucas took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're not impressed by my title, my wealth, or my power. You're not intimidated by any of that," he said, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "And that's something I've never encountered before." Jasmine smiled, and for the first time, Lucas felt a sense of ease settle over him. She wasn't going to judge him, and that was something he had feared more than anything else. The conversation flowed easily after that, both of them discovering more about each other with each passing minute. By the time the meal came to an end, Lucas knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. He didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time, he felt like he was open to finding out. As the days passed, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside him. The dinner with Jasmine had been just the beginning of something much more complex than he had ever expected. What began as a chance encounter in the most awkward of situations had transformed into something that tugged at his emotions in ways he couldn't explain. He had always been in control, his life meticulously planned and executed, but Jasmine had introduced an unpredictable element, a quiet challenge that he couldn't ignore. They had talked for hours, exploring each other's worlds in a way that felt entirely new to Lucas. The more he learned about her, the more he realized how little he knew about the world beyond the corporate walls he had built around himself. Jasmine was different. Her life hadn't been handed to her on a silver platter. She had worked hard, struggled, and fought for everything she had achieved. Her story was filled with resilience and strength, and yet, she didn't carry the bitterness that so many others would have. Lucas found that both humbling and inspiring. The way she spoke about her dreams, her goals, the way she had built her own life without relying on anyone's help, it left him in awe. For the first time in a long while, Lucas felt like he was the one who had something to learn. As he sat in his office, surrounded by the usual chaos of numbers and deals, his mind kept drifting back to her. Jasmine was not like the others in his life. She wasn't impressed by his money, his status, or his position. She didn't seem to care about what he could offer her. It was refreshing, and yet it left him unsettled. He wasn't used to being seen for who he truly was. People either wanted something from him, or they admired him for the life he had created. Jasmine saw through all that. She didn't want his wealth. She didn't want his power. She just wanted to know who he really was. And that was the part that intrigued him the most. It had been a week since that dinner, and they had texted a few times since then, but Lucas found himself wanting more. He wanted to hear her voice again, see her face, and feel that connection they had shared. He wasn't sure what this was, whether it was just a fleeting attraction or something deeper, but he knew that he wanted to explore it. One evening, as he was heading out of the office, he decided to take a chance. He sent her a message, asking if she would like to join him for another dinner. This time, he wasn't going to let the moment slip away. He needed to know if this was just an infatuation or if it was something that could turn into something real. To his surprise, Jasmine agreed. She said she was free the following evening and suggested a small Italian restaurant in the heart of the city. Lucas couldn't help but smile as he read her message. He had been nervous, unsure of how she would respond, but her willingness to meet again made him feel like he was on the right path. The next night, they met at the restaurant. It was a quiet place, with soft lighting and the hum of distant conversations. Jasmine arrived first, looking effortlessly beautiful in a simple black dress. Lucas couldn't help but stare for a moment, taken aback by how stunning she looked. When she saw him, she gave him a warm smile, and they exchanged pleasantries before sitting down. The conversation flowed easily, just like the last time. There was no pretense, no awkwardness, just two people enjoying each other's company. They talked about everything and nothing, their favorite books, childhood memories, and even the challenges they had faced in their respective careers. As they spoke, Lucas couldn't help but feel that he was uncovering a side of himself he had long buried. Jasmine made him feel like he was more than just a CEO. She made him feel human again, something he hadn't felt in years. As the evening wore on, they shared stories of their lives, of dreams and fears, hopes and regrets. There was a vulnerability between them now, an unspoken understanding that neither of them had expected. By the end of the night, Lucas knew one thing for sure. He didn't want this to end. He didn't want to walk away from her, not without knowing what came next. As they stood outside the restaurant, the city lights casting a warm glow around them, Lucas took a deep breath and, for the first time, decided to take a leap. "Jasmine," he said, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "I'm not sure what this is, but I know I don't want to stop seeing you." Jasmine looked at him, her expression soft but thoughtful. "I don't want to stop either," she said, her voice just above a whisper. And in that moment, Lucas felt like everything he had ever worked for, everything he had ever built, was leading him to this. To her. To this unexpected connection. He didn't know where it would go, but for the first time, he was willing to find out. Lucas had never been a man to take risks, not in the way people expected. He took calculated steps in business, built his empire piece by piece, and rarely did anything that wasn't part of the plan. But there was something about Jasmine that made him feel like the rules no longer applied. As the days passed since their last dinner, he found himself thinking about her more often than not. Every text, every word exchanged between them felt charged, as if it was leading to something inevitable. They had begun to see each other more regularly, their meetings both at his office and outside of it, always filled with a sense of ease. They didn't need grand gestures or constant conversation to feel comfortable together. It was as if the connection between them was something deeper, something unspoken. The way she laughed at his jokes, the way she listened to him as if her full attention was his, and the way her eyes would meet his with such sincerity made him realize how much he had been missing all these years. He had spent so much of his life surrounded by people who only wanted something from him. But Jasmine wasn't like that. She wasn't asking for anything. She just wanted to be with him. It made him wonder how he had gotten so lost in his own world of business and ambition that he had missed out on something so simple, so pure. He found himself making more time for her, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. One afternoon, as they were sitting together at a cafe, sipping their coffee, Lucas couldn't help but smile as he watched her talk about her latest project. She was passionate, animated, and every word that left her mouth was filled with purpose. She spoke with the kind of conviction he had once admired in his younger self, before the world had turned him into someone who only saw profits and deals. "You know," he said, his voice soft but steady, "you remind me of the person I used to be." Jasmine stopped mid-sentence and looked at him, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked. Lucas took a moment before responding, as if trying to find the right words. Before all of this, he gestured vaguely, indicating his successful but often hollow life. "I used to believe in something bigger than myself. I wanted to make a difference, to do something meaningful." He paused, his gaze drifting out the window for a moment before returning to her. "Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm seeing things through a different lens. Like there's more to life than just the next big deal." Jasmine's expression softened as she placed her coffee cup down, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that took him by surprise. "Lucas," she said quietly, "I'm not here to change you. But I can see that something in you is changing. And maybe that's the first step." The words hung in the air, and Lucas felt a weight lift off his chest. He hadn't expected her to understand so completely, but there was something in the way she spoke that made him believe she truly saw him. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a businessman, a CEO, or a person who had to constantly be in control. He felt like a man who was finally able to breathe. After that conversation, things between them only grew deeper. They spent more time together, their bond strengthening with each passing day. But with that growth came the inevitable realization that their connection wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was something real, something that could change both of their lives forever. Lucas had never imagined that a simple encounter could lead to something so transformative. But here he was, standing on the edge of something new, something unknown. And for the first time in years, he was willing to take the leap. He didn't know where it would lead, but he was ready to find out. One evening, as they sat together on a rooftop overlooking the city, Lucas turned to Jasmine, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew it was time. "Jasmine," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've spent so much of my life focusing on building things, on success, on control, but I never realized how empty it all felt until I met you." Jasmine looked at him, her expression unreadable, but he could see the curiosity in her eyes. "What are you saying?" she asked. He took a deep breath, knowing that this was the moment he had to make it clear. "What I'm saying is, I don't want to let you go. I want to see where this goes, whatever it is. I don't have all the answers, but I know that I want to be with you." For a long moment, Jasmine didn't say anything. She simply looked at him, her gaze unwavering. And then, finally, she smiled. "I'm glad you said that," she said softly, "because I've been thinking the same thing." And in that moment, Lucas knew that this wasn't just a passing attraction. This was something real, something that had the potential to change both of their lives forever. As the weeks passed, Lucas and Jasmine's connection only deepened. Their time together felt natural, like a rhythm that neither of them had to force. The moments they shared, whether it was a quiet dinner in a cozy restaurant or a spontaneous walk through the city, seemed to reinforce what they both knew. They were something more than just two people meeting by chance. Yet, as much as Lucas felt himself falling for Jasmine, there was a lingering fear in the back of his mind. He had always been a man of control, but now, it felt like he was handing over pieces of himself that he couldn't take back. It wasn't that he doubted Jasmine, far from it. It was the vulnerability of it all, the risk of truly opening up to someone who wasn't like anyone he had known before. But, over time, those doubts began to fade as he saw the way Jasmine looked at him. It wasn't with admiration for his success or his power. It was something more genuine, more honest. She didn't need him to be the powerful CEO. She just needed him to be himself. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Lucas found himself sitting at his desk, staring out at the city skyline. He had spent most of the day in meetings, handling issues that seemed insignificant compared to the questions swirling in his mind about Jasmine. He wasn't used to this feeling of being caught between two worlds, the world of business he had mastered and the new world of emotions he was trying to navigate. His phone buzzed on the desk, and his heart skipped a beat when he saw Jasmine's name appear on the screen. She had sent him a simple text. "How about a surprise tomorrow night?" He smiled to himself, feeling a rush of excitement at the thought of seeing her again. It had only been a few days since their last meeting, but every moment without her felt like a lifetime. He quickly typed back, agreeing without hesitation. The next evening, he arrived at their agreed-upon location, an elegant rooftop bar with a panoramic view of the city. The soft hum of distant conversations and the clinking of glasses filled the air as he made his way to the table where Jasmine was already waiting. She was dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, her hair cascading in soft waves around her shoulders. When she saw him, her eyes lit up, and for a moment, Lucas forgot everything around him. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long," he said as he approached, taking the seat across from her. She shook her head, her smile warm. "No, I was just enjoying the view," she replied, her gaze shifting toward the skyline. "This place is beautiful." Lucas nodded, looking out at the twinkling lights. "It's perfect for a surprise," he said. Jasmine's smile deepened as she leaned forward. "Well, I hope it lives up to your expectations," she said with a teasing glint in her eye. Lucas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of surprise are we talking about?" he asked, genuinely curious. Jasmine reached into her purse and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "I got you something," she said, handing it to him. Lucas took the box, surprised by the gesture. It wasn't his birthday, nor was it a special occasion. He carefully unwrapped the paper, revealing a leather-bound notebook. The cover was sleek and elegant, with no markings except for a small, embossed symbol, a phoenix. He looked up at her, puzzled. "A notebook?" he asked. Jasmine's eyes softened as she nodded. "Not just any notebook. I thought it might help you," she said quietly. "You've been carrying a lot on your shoulders lately, and maybe writing it down will help you see things differently." Lucas was taken aback. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected her to be so attuned to his thoughts, his worries, his struggle with balancing his life. He ran his fingers over the smooth leather, the weight of her words sinking in. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "I didn't know I needed this, but I do." The air between them shifted, a quiet understanding passing between them. For the first time, Lucas realized that this wasn't just about what he could give her or what they could offer each other. It was about mutual respect, a shared desire to see each other grow and become better versions of themselves. Jasmine wasn't just a part of his life. She was a catalyst for change, for growth. As they continued to talk, the evening unfolded with a sense of ease that Lucas hadn't felt in years. They spoke about everything and nothing, about dreams, regrets, and the future. Jasmine made him feel like he could be open, like he didn't have to hide behind the persona he had so carefully crafted. By the time they left the rooftop bar, Lucas felt a weight lifted from his chest, a feeling of peace he hadn't known he was missing. As they walked down the street, side by side, Lucas couldn't help but think that this, whatever it was between them, was exactly what he needed. He wasn't sure what the future held, but with Jasmine by his side, he felt ready to face it. He no longer had to do it alone. And for the first time in a long time, Lucas Bennett was ready to take a step forward, not as the CEO of a powerful company, but as a man who was beginning to understand what truly mattered. As the weeks passed, Lucas found himself growing more and more drawn to Jasmine, a connection he never anticipated but could no longer deny. It wasn't just the late-night conversations or the time they spent together, though those moments certainly played a role. It was the way she made him feel, the way she saw him without the walls he had so carefully built around himself. For the first time in years, Lucas allowed himself to be vulnerable, to let someone see the parts of him that weren't polished or perfect. Jasmine had a way of bringing that out of him. She was a mirror, reflecting back parts of him that he had forgotten existed. As their relationship deepened, Lucas began to open up in ways that felt natural, even necessary. He found himself looking forward to their dates, not because they were extravagant or luxurious, but because of the simplicity of being with her. It was as though every moment with Jasmine grounded him, reminding him of the things that really mattered. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee and discussing their respective days, Lucas noticed a subtle change in himself. He wasn't thinking about his company, about the next big project, or about the countless responsibilities he had on his plate. For once, his mind was fully present, entirely focused on the woman in front of him. He realized that she had become an anchor for him, someone who wasn't just there for the good times, but was also a steady presence when life became overwhelming. "Jasmine," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about everything. About you, about me, about where we're headed." She looked at him, her expression thoughtful but patient. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soft and encouraging. Lucas took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I think I've been running away from the truth for a long time," he said. "I've been so focused on building this empire, on controlling every aspect of my life, that I've forgotten what it feels like to just live, to really live, to be with someone who makes me feel free." Jasmine's eyes softened as she reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. "I don't want to change you, Lucas," she said quietly. "I just want to be here, with you. I want to share this life with you, in whatever way that means." Her words settled into his heart, and for the first time, Lucas felt a sense of peace he had long been searching for. He realized that, in Jasmine, he had found something far more valuable than success, far more lasting than wealth. He had found a connection, a partnership that wasn't bound by expectations or agendas. It was just about being there for each other, in the simplest and most profound way possible. As the days went by, their bond only grew stronger. They continued to spend time together, exploring new places, trying new experiences, and supporting each other through both the highs and lows of life. Lucas had never been one to share his personal struggles, but with Jasmine, it felt different. She made it easy to open up, to express his fears, his uncertainties, and even his regrets. And as he did, he realized that the weight he had been carrying for so long began to lift. One night, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Lucas stopped in his tracks, pulling her gently to a stop as well. "There's something I've been meaning to say," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you in it. I want to build something with you, not just in business, but in life. I want to see where this goes, no matter what." Jasmine looked up at him, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights. Her smile was warm, full of affection, and her eyes sparkled with something that Lucas couldn't quite describe. "I want that too," she said softly. "More than anything." In that moment, Lucas knew. He knew that this wasn't just a fleeting connection, a passing moment. This was real, and whatever came next, he was ready to face it, with her by his side. The uncertainty that had once plagued him, the fear of losing control, faded into the background as he realized that sometimes the best things in life weren't the ones you planned for or controlled. Sometimes, the best things happen when you let go and let life unfold, one step at a time. And with Jasmine, he was finally ready to take that step. Together. The months seemed to fly by as Lucas and Jasmine continued to build a life together, one that was centered around the connection they shared. Lucas found himself becoming more open, more willing to embrace the unpredictability of life, something he had never been able to do before. Every moment with Jasmine felt like a breath of fresh air, a break from the structured, often lonely existence he had known. Their relationship was different from anything Lucas had ever experienced. There were no expectations, no agendas, just two people enjoying each other's company, learning and growing together. Lucas didn't have to be the CEO when he was with her. He didn't have to worry about making the right decisions or living up to other people's standards. With Jasmine, he could just be himself. And that, more than anything, had become his greatest gift. As time went on, Lucas began to think more seriously about the future. For the first time in years, he wasn't just looking ahead to the next big deal or the next step in his career. He was looking ahead to what his life could be with Jasmine by his side. It was a thought he had never entertained before. Business had always been his priority, but now, there was something else. One evening, as they sat together in the park, watching the sun set behind the skyline, Lucas turned to Jasmine with a quiet resolve. "Jasmine," he said softly, "I've been thinking about everything about us. I want you to know that I'm ready to take the next step with you. I'm ready to let go of the past and build a future together." Jasmine's eyes softened, her expression warm and understanding. She reached out to take his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Lucas, you don't have to do this alone," she said, her voice full of tenderness. "I'm here with you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Lucas felt his heart swell with emotion as he looked at her, realizing just how much she had become a part of his life. "I know," he replied, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "I never knew what it meant to truly live until I met you. I'm ready to build something real, something that isn't just about work or achievements. I want to build a life with you." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, sitting in the quiet park, sharing a moment that felt both surreal and entirely natural. As they walked hand in hand back to their car, Lucas felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. This wasn't just about falling in love. It was about finding someone who made him feel whole, someone who made him want to be a better version of himself. And for the first time in his life, Lucas realized that success wasn't just measured by the number of deals he closed or the empire he had built. It was about the relationships he nurtured, the connections he formed, and the love he gave and received. A few weeks later, as they sat together on the balcony of his apartment, Lucas felt the weight of the decision he was about to make. He had known for a while that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Jasmine, but tonight, he was ready to say it out loud. "Jasmine," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "I can't imagine my life without you. You've changed everything for me. I've spent so many years focused on the wrong things, but now, I see what really matters." Jasmine turned to him, her gaze soft and loving. "You don't have to say anything, Lucas," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "I already know how you feel." Lucas smiled, his heart full. He had never felt so sure of anything in his life. He knew, without a doubt, that Jasmine was the person he wanted to build a future with. "Then let me show you," he said, his voice steady. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. As he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring, Jasmine's eyes widened, and for a moment, she was speechless. "Jasmine," he said, his voice soft but filled with love, "will you marry me?" Jasmine's eyes filled with tears as she took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will." In that moment, Lucas felt his heart soar. It wasn't just the ring or the proposal that made it so special. It was the realization that he had found the person who made him feel whole, the person who made life feel meaningful. And as they embraced, standing together on the balcony, Lucas knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter that, for the first time, wasn't just about success or ambition. It was about love and everything that came with it. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of excitement, anticipation, and a few nerves. Jasmine and Lucas found themselves swept up in the whirlwind of planning, choosing a venue, selecting colors, and making sure every detail was perfect. But through all the bustle, there was one thing that stood out more than anything else: their connection. They were about to embark on a journey together, and neither of them could have been more certain that this was the right step. Every decision they made was filled with the same sense of excitement that had started when they first met. The laughter, the late-night talks, and the small moments of silence between them. It was all a part of the foundation they had built together. The day before the wedding, Lucas found himself standing in front of the mirror in his suit, adjusting his tie and taking a deep breath. The weight of the moment hit him all at once, and for the first time in weeks, his nerves got the best of him. He had been in countless high-pressure situations, but nothing compared to this. This wasn't a deal or a meeting, it was his life. It was his future with Jasmine. He thought about how much he had changed since meeting her. He had learned to let go, to be vulnerable, to trust in something that wasn't about control or power. With Jasmine, he didn't need to be perfect. He didn't need to have everything figured out. He just needed to be himself. As he made his way to the venue, his mind kept returning to the way she had made him feel from the very beginning. She had brought out a side of him he didn't know existed. She had made him believe in love, in something real and lasting. And now, as he stood at the threshold of their wedding day, he was ready to give her everything. When he arrived at the venue, the soft hum of music and the scent of flowers filled the air. The place was perfect, simple, elegant, just like Jasmine. He walked through the doors, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. This was where he was meant to be. As the ceremony began, Lucas stood at the altar, his heart pounding with excitement. He glanced down the aisle, and there she was, Jasmine. She looked radiant in her dress. Her eyes locked on him with the same love and certainty that had brought them together. As she walked toward him, Lucas felt as though time had slowed. Everything around him faded away until it was just the two of them. He couldn't take his eyes off of her. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, feeling the warmth of her touch. I can't believe this is really happening, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I've waited for this day, but I never knew it would feel like this. Jasmine smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. I've waited for this too, she said softly. But now that it's here, I know it's everything I've ever wanted. The vows they exchanged were simple, yet powerful. They spoke of love, trust, and the promise of a future together. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, Lucas knew that this was the moment he had been waiting for. It wasn't about the ceremony, the guests, or the flowers. It was about the two of them, committing to each other for a lifetime. As they stood together, hand in hand, Lucas felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This wasn't just the beginning of a marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. A chapter that wasn't defined by their pasts, but by the love they shared. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, music, and joy. Lucas and Jasmine danced together, lost in each other's arms, as the world around them seemed to fade into the background. For the first time, Lucas truly understood what it meant to be happy, to be whole. With Jasmine by his side, he had everything he had ever wanted. And as they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Lucas couldn't help but feel like the luckiest man in the world. He had found something real, something that no amount of success or wealth could ever replace. He had found love, and it was everything he had ever needed. The weeks that followed their wedding were filled with a new sense of peace and purpose. Lucas had never known what it meant to truly settle into life. Not just the hustle of work or the endless chase for success, but to embrace the quiet moments, the simplicity of just being. With Jasmine, every day felt like a gift. She made him realize that life didn't have to be all about the future or the next big thing. It was about enjoying the present, about finding joy in the little things, like sharing a morning cup of coffee or taking an evening walk through the park. For Lucas, this was a revelation. He had always been driven by ambition, by the need to achieve more and more. But now, with Jasmine by his side, he felt that he could breathe. It wasn't that he had stopped caring about his work. He still found passion in his company and the projects he led. But he had learned to balance it, to make room for the things that truly mattered. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their home, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jasmine turned to Lucas with a soft smile. "Do you ever think about having a family?" she asked, her voice gentle but curious. Lucas looked at her, feeling the weight of the question. Family. It was something he hadn't really thought about before, not in the way Jasmine meant. He had always been focused on his career, on building his legacy. But with her, with everything they had built together, the idea of family seemed like something beautiful, something worth considering. "I've never really thought about it. Not like this," he said slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "But now that you ask, I can see it. A family. With you." Jasmine's eyes softened, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I think we could build something amazing together," she said quietly. "Not just with our work, but with our love. And if we want a family, we can make that happen too." The thought of children, of creating a family with Jasmine, filled him with a sense of warmth and excitement he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about having children. It was about creating a life, a legacy, one built on love, trust, and the same values they had shared since the beginning. "I agree," Lucas said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I think we're ready for that, for whatever comes next." Together, over the next few months, they talked more about their future, about what they wanted to build, not just in terms of their careers, but in every aspect of their lives. They spent their days working side by side, supporting each other in their endeavors, and their evenings enjoying simple pleasures together. Whether it was a quiet dinner at home, a trip to the countryside, or just sitting in comfortable silence, they found joy in the moments they shared. And as the seasons changed, so did their lives. Their home became filled with warmth, with love, and with the promise of a future that was theirs to shape. Then, one day, as they sat in their favorite spot in the park, Lucas turned to Jasmine with a sense of resolve. "I want to take this next step with you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I want to start this chapter of our lives, together. Let's build the family we've talked about." Jasmine smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. She had always known that Lucas was the man she wanted to spend her life with. He had shown her a kind of love she had never experienced before, a love that was steady, unwavering, and pure. "Yes," she said softly. "I want that too." I want to build our future together. As they stood hand in hand, looking out over the park, Lucas felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. The path ahead was still uncertain, but with Jasmine by his side, he was ready to face it. Together, they could create something beautiful. They had already built a life full of love and promise, and now, they were ready to take the next step. The future was theirs to write, and Lucas knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with love as their foundation. The months continued to pass in a peaceful blur for Lucas and Jasmine. Life had fallen into a rhythm that felt just right, and with each passing day, their connection grew deeper. Their home had become a sanctuary of love and understanding, a place where they could both unwind from the pressures of their respective worlds. The conversations they shared were often filled with laughter, curiosity, and the quiet assurance that they were on the right path together. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the porch sipping iced tea, Jasmine looked at Lucas, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she began softly, "we've talked so much about our future, but I haven't asked you. What kind of family do you imagine?" Lucas was taken aback by the question, though it was something they had touched on briefly in the past. It wasn't something he had given too much thought to, especially after all the years spent building his career. But now, sitting next to Jasmine, it was hard to ignore the quiet dream that had begun to take shape in his mind. "I think," Lucas paused, gathering his thoughts. "I think I've always pictured a family that's full of love. A home where we support each other, where we encourage each other to be the best versions of ourselves. A place where we can always come back to, no matter what's going on in the world outside." Jasmine's eyes softened as she listened, her heart swelling with emotion. "That sounds perfect," she said, her voice full of warmth. "I want that too, Lucas. I want to build a life with you that's grounded in love, in respect, and in the little things that matter most." It was then that Lucas realized just how deeply he had fallen for her. She was his partner, his equal, and the person who had made him believe in a future that was about more than just success and achievement. It was about family, love, and connection. He reached for her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "I want that with you too, Jasmine," he said quietly. "And I think we're ready for whatever comes next. Together." The words were simple, but they carried a weight of certainty that neither of them had ever experienced before. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the perfect plans. It was about knowing, in their hearts, that they were ready for the next step. As the evening wore on, the sky deepening into shades of purple and orange, Lucas and Jasmine sat together in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. It was moments like these that made everything else seem insignificant. The world outside could change, could throw whatever challenges it wanted their way. But in this moment, they had each other. And that was enough. They didn't need to have everything figured out. They didn't need to know exactly when or how they would start their family. They just knew that, whatever it was, they would face it together. With every day that passed, the life they were building felt more and more real. They were no longer just two people navigating their own separate paths. They were creating something together. A life, a future, a family. Lucas felt a sense of peace settle over him, a feeling he hadn't realized he was missing until now. He had spent so many years focused on building an empire, but what he had found with Jasmine was something even more valuable. It was the foundation of a love that could withstand anything. It was a future that was rooted in trust and shared dreams, not in wealth or titles. Jasmine had changed him in ways he hadn't thought possible. She had shown him that love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about the quiet moments, the support, and the belief in each other. It was about partnership. And for the first time in his life, Lucas realized that he had everything he needed. Not because of the success he had achieved, but because of the love he had found. As the evening faded into night, they stood together, hand in hand, watching the stars emerge in the sky. Lucas knew that whatever the future held, he was ready for it. With Jasmine by his side, there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they would build a life full of love, laughter, and everything they had dreamed of. Spring arrived quietly in the city the following year, carrying with it the soft warmth of new beginnings. Lucas stood near the wide living room window of their home, sunlight spilling across the polished floor as he watched Jasmine in the garden below. She was laughing as she carefully arranged fresh flowers along the small stone path they had built together months earlier. It was a simple garden, nothing like the grand landscapes that surrounded the luxury homes of many executives he knew. Yet to Lucas it felt more valuable than any penthouse view he had ever owned. Because every inch of that place had been created with intention, patience, and love. Their life had changed in ways Lucas never could have imagined when he first built Bennett Enterprises. The man who once measured success only by quarterly numbers now measured it by something entirely different. The quiet mornings when Jasmine hummed softly while making coffee. The evenings when they walked through their neighborhood under warm streetlights, talking about dreams instead of deadlines. The peace of knowing that home was no longer just a place where he slept between meetings. Home was where Jasmine was. A soft breeze moved through the garden, lifting a strand of Jasmine's hair as she looked up toward the window. When she noticed Lucas watching, she waved with the same bright smile that had once completely disarmed the most controlled man in Manhattan. Lucas smiled back, remembering the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. One accidental moment, one open door, one unexpected glance that had changed everything. He had built an empire with strategy and discipline, but the most important chapter of his life had begun by pure accident. Or perhaps it had never been an accident at all. Later that afternoon, they sat together on the porch swing Lucas had installed the previous summer. The golden light of sunset stretched across the yard as the city skyline shimmered faintly in the distance. Jasmine rested her head gently on his shoulder, and Lucas wrapped his arm around her, feeling the quiet rhythm of the life they had built. There were no grand speeches in that moment. No dramatic declarations. Just peace. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" Lucas said softly. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Lucas let out a quiet breath, watching the sun slowly dip lower. "All of this. My entire life used to be about control. Every meeting scheduled down to the minute. Every decision calculated. But the best thing that ever happened to me started with a mistake." Jasmine smiled, her voice warm and calm. "Maybe it was not a mistake. Maybe it was timing." Lucas turned slightly toward her. "You mean fate?" Jasmine laughed gently. "I mean life has a funny way of opening doors when we least expect it." Lucas looked out across the yard again, thinking about how close he had come to living a completely different life. A life filled with power and success, but missing the one thing that gave everything meaning. Jasmine had not just changed his future, she had changed him. She had reminded him that strength did not come from control alone. It came from connection, trust, and the courage to let someone truly see you. The sky slowly darkened, and small stars began to appear above the city lights. Lucas gently took Jasmine's hand, their fingers fitting together as naturally as they had from the beginning. "You know," Lucas said quietly, "for years people asked me what my greatest achievement was. I always said building the company. But they were wrong." Jasmine looked at him curiously. "Then what is it?" Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "Finding you." Jasmine smiled, the same warm smile that had once caught him completely off guard on the most unexpected day of his life. The world around them continued to move as it always did. Traffic flowed through the streets. Lights flickered on across the skyline. But on that quiet porch, under the soft glow of the evening sky, Lucas Bennett understood something that no business deal could ever teach him. Sometimes the greatest success in life is not something you build. Sometimes it is someone you find. And sometimes all it takes to discover it is one open door.